To Get Up. It is presented by ESPN Bet. I'm Brian Custer in for Greeny. Look, I know it's been a minute, but I'm back. And look, I got a really big team with me today here at the Seaport. We got Tim Bontemps, we got Alan Hahn, we got a lot to talk about in the NBA. And because it's so much to talk about, we also have Wendy with us. We got Woj with us as well. Why?
Coffee.
Because there was some really big news going on while you were sleeping. Breaking news. It came at 3:30 this morning with a WOJ bomb. Free agent Paul George heading back east after agreeing to a 4-year, $212 million max contract with the 76ers, according to our sources here at ESPN. Now listen, Cindy, if you can bring up A16. George, he joins a pair of stars in Philly with Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. Maxey expected to extend with Philly, by the way, this summer. Philly also made other moves on day one of free agency, signing Kelly Oubre Jr., Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, some shooting as well. So let's bring in the man who broke all the news while everybody was sleeping, and that is Adrian Wojnarowski. And Woj, what sold Paul George on leaving L.A. and coming to Philly?
Brian, the door really opened for the Sixers when the Clippers just were not willing to go to a 4th year on a new Paul George contract in L.A. You know, they wanted to do a 3-year deal comparable to what they had done with Kawhi Leonard. And that really started to open the door to Paul George leaving the Clippers. You know, they had months to negotiate, and they did negotiate between the Clippers and Paul George. But the Clippers stayed steadfast, and, you know, that allowed Philadelphia to stay in there until just last night when Paul George met with, very late at his house in L.A., met with the 76ers contingent that I'm told included Dr. J, and he committed to a 4-year, $212 million deal. I'm told that's got a player option at the end of it. And now it is Paul George, Joel Embiid, and of course Tyrese Maxey, you know, trying to take on the NBA champion Boston Celtics in the East.
I'm just curious, Woj, because you look at it, the Clippers could have offered him really more money. They got a new building coming up. How close were they to keeping Paul George?
Never terribly close, Brian. And, you know, this is, in the Clippers' minds, the reality of the new collective bargaining agreement, that they wanted to be able to put a team around this Clipper group of Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, that they believe would be good enough to compete for a championship. You know, they didn't want to pay Paul George, have him on the books at 37, 38 years old, you know, for $55, $58 million. And there are lots of hard choices a lot of teams are going to have to make in the NBA, especially with older players. But Philly, listen, to tie the money up, they are now in the 3 players, Paul George, Joel Embiid, and then Tyrese Maxey. You know, you're going to be very limited around them in what you could do. But the Sixers had been chasing this max slot, trying to find a 3rd star to go with for Joel Embiid, and sold him on patience to get to this year. He's got a co-star in Tyrese Maxey, and that they were going to be big game hunting this summer. And again, the door opened for Philly when the Clippers just had restraint on how far they were willing to go with Paul George.
Well, if they were big game hunting, they certainly caught the biggest catch in PG. All right, let's bring in the rest of the NBA guys here. And Wendy, what more can you add on what this means for free agency here going forward?
Well, this was basically the two sides needed each other, and it worked out because there was really only one true max player on the market for Philly to go after. When they had spent a lot of time clearing this space, going back to the James Harden trade at the beginning of last season, they needed to fill that max hole, and that George is the number 1 target. When it came down to it, when the Clippers couldn't figure out a trade with the Warriors and the other teams that had cap space, like already had sort of dedicated it elsewhere, there was really only one place for Paul George to cleanly sign a straight max contract, and that was Philly. And it turns out that fit between the two sides is pretty good. You look at Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, they need that wing two-way defender to compete in the Eastern Conference. and Paul George fits perfectly. And now they will go through what we expect to be a very incredibly strong I-95 corridor in the Eastern Conference, with the Knicks powered up, the Celtics holding the trophy, and the Sixers hoping to join that party.
Yeah, it's been a long time since you have the Celtics that are good, the Knicks that are good, and now the Sixers that are good. Give me your reaction to Paul George to the Sixers.
Yeah, I'm with Wendy, though. The Northeast is back when it comes to the NBA, but 29 other teams, to me, shouldn't have done this deal. But there's one team in the league that needed to and should have. It's the right thing for the Sixers to do, because to give a full 4-year max to a guy who's 34 years old for a lot of teams in the league doesn't make sense. In fact, the Knicks did have an opportunity to do this last year and decided against it. But for Paul George and the Sixers, it's perfect. Why? Joel Embiid's 30. There's not going to be a lot of tread left on the tire in the next 3 to 4 years when you consider Joel Embiid has had a hard time just getting through a full season staying healthy. So they are all in right now, because right now is the winning window for the Sixers. So while around the league there are some people that look at this and say $200 million to a 34-year-old, 4 years to a guy this old, how old is he going to be at the end of this thing? Doesn't matter to the Sixers, because they've got to get it done right now while Joel Embiid is still very much in his prime. And we saw him at the end of this past season where he was dragging his leg up and down the floor once again. So no other team in the league should have really done this, but for Philly, it's a perfect move.
And you know what? I remember at the end of the season, we kept talking about this is going to be an important summer for Joel Embiid, because it's like, what is Philly going to do for them? Everybody's looking at the Celtics. What does this say? And you cover the Sixers. You're there all the time. What does this say about their approach when it comes to competing with the Celtics, a mano here going forward?
Well, listen, Adrian summed it up before. The Sixers have told Joel Embiid for a year to be patient and to wait. And we're going to go out next summer. We're going to get the best player we can get, and we're going to put the best team around you we possibly can. The Sixers now have the best big three in the NBA. It's really not close. With the 3 guys they have now, all of whom were all-stars last year, you got a lead guard in Maxey, got an elite two-way wing in Embiid, or in Paul George. You've got maybe the most dominant big in the league in Joel Embiid. They fit together perfectly. They complement each other in every way on the court. They're versatile. Paul George is an elite shooter. You have 2 elite shooters now, given spacing around Embiid. They can go out and get any kind of role players that can fit alongside them. They're versatile in a lot of ways. They have the highest ceiling now of any team in the league but the Boston Celtics. And they can go toe-to-toe with the Celtics depending on how healthy these guys are, which is obviously the biggest question. Paul George missed a bunch of time. You mentioned Allen. Joel has missed a lot of time. But if they're healthy in the spring, which obviously is going to be a huge if,
yes,
they are as good as any team in the league. And this isn't like the Phoenix Suns putting this big 3 together last year that was flawed from the start. This is a group that fits together perfectly. And the Sixers were a team that a year ago didn't really have a chance to win a title. Now they can go into the season saying, we have a legitimate shot to win a title with Paul George, which is why, Alan, you're right. For Philadelphia, given this contract to Paul George right now, they had to do it when they got the opportunity. They took advantage of it.
You talked about health. How much pressure then is on Joel Embiid right now?
Daryl Morey has rendered Joel Embiid excuseless now. Somebody very smart said to me before this show, and it is actually the exact thing here. Because while this is about adding a guy like Paul George, this is still about Joel Embiid and maximizing whatever you can out of him, because when you consider him against, let's just look at the East. He's the one player that no one has an answer for. He's unguardable. The Knicks don't have anybody that can really guard him. They have Mitchell Robinson, but there's a health issue there with him. He has guarded him well, but still, it's Joel Embiid. You guard him well, he still gets 30 and 15. The Celtics don't have anybody to guard him. Kristaps Porzingis is already going to miss half the season with his injury, but even still, when he's healthy, Joel Embiid gets what he wants. In the whole league, Nikola Jokic, you know what Embiid does against him? We see the numbers. He owns that matchup as well. So he's the one unguardable piece that they have in this whole thing. It's dragging him to the finish line that they've got to do. And I'll say this, if I'm the Sixers, and I know it's not going to happen, there's no way in hell he should play in the Olympics. Not after coming off an injury at the end of the season, not after what this organization has just done for you by adding this extra star, this extra piece. He should not play in the Olympics. He should get himself completely healthy and ready for this season, because this window is open, but it's a very short window, and they've got to go for it right now.
That's interesting, Wendy. He talks about this window. How big of a window is it for Paul George and Joel Embiid to get it done with this move?
It's very hard to say, because so much of it is dependent on the health of both Paul George and Joel Embiid, because these are 2 guys who have had injury problems in the past. What I will say is Paul George is coming off of absolutely spectacular season. He played 74 games for the Clippers. He really dedicated himself to improving his body and getting in his best shape as possible and putting together a great year last year. He never shot the ball better than last year, was dynamic all over the place, and had, the Clippers had this absolutely glorious 60 days last year where they were the best team in the NBA, and, that's what the Sixers are hoping for. But the Sixers' window to win, whether it was 3 years ago or 3 years from now, will always be dictated by how healthy Joel Embiid is in April and May. They haven't been able to get that, but now if they get that, they'll have supporting pieces that make anything possible.
Woj, of course, you broke this big story. I got to give you the final word. Give us a final word on all this.
It's going to be really interesting for Paul George. He started his career in the Eastern Conference in Indiana, going up against the Miami Heat, the New York Knicks of Carmelo Anthony, and now he comes back east to Philadelphia, maybe a little bit out of his comfort zone. He thought he was going back to L.A. for the rest of his career with the Clippers, but now, for Paul George, could be his best chance at being part of a championship team.
All right, we'll see what happens.
Hey, what's up, guys? Jag from Jaggy Sports here. Crazy news, and we all know this is happening. Wow. All I gotta say is wow, because you just saw the breaking news of what just transpired, and now the chips are about to fall. What is the landscape looking like, right? What is the landscape looking like? Because we all saw what New York did. We all saw what New York did with OG Anunoby, with Mikal Bridges, and they have a couple other pieces to fit here and there. With the Lakers, they have a couple pieces to fit here and there. They have to compete with the Western Conference. How are you going to compete with the Minnesota Timberwolves? They're out for redemption from this past season. Anthony Edwards is a killer. You have two bigs right there in Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. A couple other great pieces. So you got to compete with them. You got to compete with Denver Nuggets, obviously. So a lot of stuff is in play. And I just can't believe we're off to a hot start in the free agency period. And, it's kind of looking like who's better, the East or the West right now? As of right now, who is better, the East or the West? It could be anybody's ball game, right? But New York, they did a great job pre-free agency, right? Now you have to think, what's going to happen in the next few days? Because in the next few days, all these small pieces are going to drop. You got DeMar DeRozan, you got Isaiah Hartenstein. All these pieces are going to drop, and it's just a matter of time before we actually find out who's going where. It's pretty crazy, right? Like any blockbuster deal could happen. Darius Garland, he might get traded. Who knows, right? We have yet to find out what's going to happen with that contract with the Cavs and the Bucks. The Bucks are a team to watch. Let's just put it that way. The Bucks are a team to watch because they're not afraid to take the big swing. They're not afraid to take the big swing. So are they in play for a lot of stuff right now? I think they are. I had recent comments about the Bucks doing their thing, and they should pick up Brandon Ingram as a trade chip, and quite frankly, that could happen. Philly, that could happen. Sacramento Kings, that's another thing. I had somebody post something where I think De'Aaron Fox is just waiting to play really good, then he'll get the Supermax deal, which is awesome for the Sacramento Kings. Are they waiting on Kyle Kuzma? Because they've been rumored for Kyle Kuzma for quite some time. And, it's just the whole playing field is about to change, right? We have a couple big pieces and a couple small pieces, but now we're starting to see the layout of the land, right? Indiana Pacers, I was telling my buddy that, Indiana's got a big potential. Orlando's got a big potential as well. Orlando's could have done a lot better this year, but obviously they needed a couple more pieces. So turns out they can actually do some damage this year, right? If they add the right pieces. So there's a lot of stuff in play. I really like how the New Orleans Pelicans are falling into place when they got the DeJounte Murray deal. DeJounte Murray, I know he doesn't push the needle, but he'll help you get to where you got to go. So I think the Pelicans have gotten better with that deal. Just got to figure out the whole Brandon Ingram thing. And yeah, no, it's pretty phenomenal what's taking place. Detroit Pistons, a lot of teams are out there, a lot of people are saying we want Detroit to get better, get Ingram for Detroit. And I think for Detroit, if you are a bad team, you want to kind of tank. And I don't want to say, hey, I encourage tanking, right? I don't. But look who's coming up for the 2025 draft. The number 1 pick, Cooper Flagg, is up. And you want to get that guy. You want to get that guy for sure. So Detroit, I know you guys just hired JB Bickerstaff. You're a young team. You need some direction. You let go of Monty Williams. I get it, cool. But, if you're going to tank, you're going to tank, right? Cooper Flagg is the number 1 pick for 2025. Trae Young, he's not going to the Lakers because he quit Clutch Sports. So let's just get that out of the way. Trae Young is most likely, and what I'm hearing and all the reports that I've read, Spurs have an interest in Trae Young. They have an interest in Trae Young, and I think the feeling is mutual because if you take a look at what's going on in Atlanta, they got a lot of young guys and a lot of picks. So does Trae Young want to be an experiment again? You did that with DeJounte Murray, didn't work, and now you're going to do that with a bunch of young guys. So we'll see what happens on that note. But I want to talk about the LA Clippers. LA Clippers, Kawhi Leonard, right? Kawhi Leonard, he is going to Team USA Basketball this offseason. Now, Kawhi Leonard is injury prone. So if you're going to Team USA this offseason and then playing for the full season coming up, how healthy are you going to be, right? This experiment has lasted since 2019, 5 years now, spanning 5 years. So if this experiment has not worked in LA, then, I get it. James Harden truly believes. Russell Westbrook still believes. This is going to be a hard sell for free agents. And this is going to be a hard sell for Clipper fans because it's a tough ask, right? You're going to play a mighty, mighty USA basketball scenario up against Wemby, France, and whatnot. But now, right after that, you got to go into spring training. You do that, and then you got to play a 82-game regular season. So, are you going to last? That's the question. So, if I'm Clippers, you lost a lot of bench because you traded that deal to the 76ers. You lost a huge amount of bench. You got to get that back. And Steve Ballmer, I know he's got a lot of money. Be prepared to spend it if you want to get back to the playoff run. Back to the deep playoff run. You spent a lot on the new arena and you got to do something. So, I don't know. At the end of the day, it looks damn good. The NBA right now, the layout of the field right now. And all teams are about to get better. Big chips, the biggest chips of this free agency. You all saw what happened and now you're going to see what occurs now from now on. Leave a comment in the comment section. Tell me what you guys think. Who is the next big piece to fall? Jag from Jaggy Sports.